Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Inner Heart Podcast. This time we're going to go a little rogue. We're going to talk about something that maybe could be controversial, could be a little spicy, but I think it's important to have these discussions and talk about them and see the different perspectives that we all have. So yes, we will be talking about politics with our guest. So our guest has volunteered to be on this podcast to talk about some controversial items, but not really. We're not going to go into great depth, but it is Ramadan, and I think this question is always in our heads. Should we be celebrating Eid to the extent that we do, especially nowadays in North America? Because we know that there's many atrocities that are happening around the world. And I think last year was probably that's the first time in a long time, right? So before I talk more about it, but that's the topic, I'm going to introduce our guest. So our guest is my friend, Bilal. Welcome.
Thank you.
Are you excited to be at the Inner Heart Podcast?
I am. I love the fact that you chose the most difficult topic for me to come here and talk about.
He volunteered to do it. But the conversation is we're not going to be talking about it where it's too serious. We'll have some lightheartedness, but obviously it is a serious topic, so we will touch upon those topics, touch upon that theme as well. But I brought you onto this podcast because, first of all, not many people would want to talk about politics. So thank you. And secondly, because I think I do find myself as a person, if I'm reading news or if I'm reading an article, I try to find out where the source is coming from. Like, is this an actual accurate news article, or is this someone just kind of BSing almost, you know? And especially in Canada, we only have like 3 or 5 news outlets, right? So how do you, I guess I'm going to go from the beginning and just say, how do you filter through where do you get your accurate news? Yes.
I think this has been the age-old question, right? That's why, I mean, not to get too political in the very beginning, but Donald Trump labeled it as fake news.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's where the term came from. So you did not know what's real, what's fake, and that's what we've been dealing with. I mean, a lot of times you'll see on your WhatsApp, your family will send you a whole bunch of clips.
The aunties
exactly.
do this.
I recently had someone send a clip which was at least 5 years old, but everyone thought this is like extremely recent.
Yeah.
So people don't even know the age of certain clips and the relevance,
and they just take it for what it is. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, it may fit at a certain time period, it doesn't fit anymore, but they will take that clip
or like out of context. But is it accurate?
It is accurate, but the timing is not. The topic could be something else, the subject could be different. But that's the whole point of misinformation. In our case, I mean, we're blessed with internet, so you can go and search for a lot of things, but you're never going to find.
So do you actually make it a habit? If somebody sends you an article, you try to figure out where is the source coming from? Yeah,
you have to look at that. It's very challenging for someone to just take a clip and be at the face value and say, this is super accurate. Also, I mean, if you look at, I mean, in the old times, you had the news channels, like typical CNN, Fox, BBC, and then they'll report on it, but now it's more opinion-based, right?
Yeah.
So people can be very biased.
So you do see news changing. Okay, but we'll talk about that in a little while. However, I brought you on this podcast because I thought exactly of that. I used to think that, I find the source, I try to look at it. I never really send something unless I know that it is accurate, even if it's a TikTok. And TikTok has a lot of fake information. But I think when I met you, it was like you would take it to the next level. You would almost like, it'd be like flipping a coin and be like, okay, did you consider this? And I'd be like, oh, maybe I did not consider this side of the story, or perhaps. Because you can only do so much research, but then I feel like you absorb information very fast and very quick, and you're able to make better news judgments. I'm not going to say otherwise. News
That's
judgments.
a big compliment.
Yeah, so I do think you can do that, and not a lot of people do this actually. It's true. Like I'm going to say I try to, but I don't think I do it to your level either, which, you know, we've had conversations, and in my opinion. So exactly. But I think you do that. So that's why I wanted to touch upon this topic with you. And coming back to the fake news, now, do you think that like people should actually be concerned, like this is an actual concerning matter for our society right now? Like they're absorbing information from mainstream media. Even TikTok has become mainstream, right? So that's yeah. So is this concerning?
It's the biggest problem right now, right? So I think with people really going into shorter formats, that's your consumption model now, right? So people look at short clips. No one has the time to listen to longer clips. So the whole point of clickbait, and with the AI now, I think it's going to become even harder to sift through what's actually real, what's not. And I think that's why some of the longer formats are getting more popular too now. So if you look at the podcast industry, like the Joe Rogans of the world, they're doing a lot longer formats. You have to watch 3 years, 2 years. I mean, you can pick your favorite. You look at a lot of famous people now doing longer formats now, because no one can take things out of context, right? But this is going to be a big problem.
Is it difficult? Like, do they find it difficult to do short format almost? Like, do they find it like it almost bites them in the ass kind of thing?
I mean, people want quick and immediate impact. And the only way you can do that is with shorter clips, because that's the attention span. No one is going to sit down in today's age and, you know, today's time. No one is going to sit down and be like, I want to watch 3 hours and actually make a sound judgment on a certain thing. Yeah. So that's why these things are becoming super dangerous now. So you see the impact in the elections, whether it's U.S. now, it's going to be the Canadian election is going to be a huge thing. All around the world, this has been a big problem, and it's like I said, with AI, it's even going to become increasingly challenging, because there's been clips and pictures that people have been circulating online, and people think that these are actual images.
Have you come across a lot of them?
Oh yeah, a lot of them. And even I mean, for us normal people, it's hard enough to know what's real or what's fake, but even credited news outlets have published them on their website as actual ones. That is very dangerous. There was one clip, not even a clip, sorry, one photo when there was this the flooding that happened, and I think in Florida when the hurricane came, and they showed an image of a little girl holding a little dog and crying. Yeah. And it was used as a political tool to say how a certain government or certain group of people don't care about people, and they're like, look at it, how helpless do they look. Yeah. Turned out it was an AI generated image, but it was published on mainstream media, and everyone and people eventually. How come I haven't come across this? Yeah, you should check it out. It actually made a lot of headlines. Maybe they were trying to, I don't want to compare anything, but there have been a lot of those children type images come from the war that we're seeing in the Middle East. Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is real. Yeah, that's real. Like, no one's faking that. Exactly. But you can definitely change the narrative by generating those kind of images and pictures. Okay, since I think this is a good segue to us getting into the real conversation for this episode. Now, there are many atrocities that are happening around the world for Muslims, and you mentioned, the AI generated a kid who's holding a dog and feeling helpless, and, you need to help this person. Now, when the war started last year and we started seeing those images, I think it's probably the first war, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the first war that's been live streamed the way that it had been on TikTok and Instagram. I mean, it was all the journalists that were reporting. Now, I went through I think I talked to you about it, like I went through a big conflict where I was like, I actually don't follow a lot of the journalists anymore, because it really started taking a toll on me. So do you think
do you think it's appropriate? You don't have to get completely. You don't have to answer it as deep as possible. But do you think it's appropriate to see a war live?
I think it is, because you have to get both sides of the story, and if you don't, then one group can control the narrative. And what you've seen in the past conflicts is media can easily control the narrative.
Yeah.
So Iraq war, wars before that, I mean, well before our time, what you've heard is just people pushing their own narrative and their own agendas.
That's true.
So as brutal it may sound, that you have to watch these clips, and that's the reality of life. But if it's not available to you, or you can't watch it, then you won't understand the perspective from the other side. This is the first time I feel, from a media perspective, just from the media perspective, the two sides were on an even playing field. That's what I felt.
From the media perspective.
From a media perspective, right?
Not from any other perspective.
Not from other, like, financial, and not from other, like, the actual war machine. It's just, you got to see both sides.
That's actually, it's true. I just didn't have the heart to see it. Yeah. I really started following the journalists and, like, are they alive today and stuff like that. I think I'm more of a reader. Like, I can just read it and I'll be okay. I'll read an article. But to watch it, I don't know. Again, you get so immune to this, and all of a sudden you're like, it's... The problem was, I feel like I'm scrolling, like, at one point, like, someone's having a great meal, or they're on vacation.
Yeah.
And then the second picture is, like, a kid in war, right? Like, I couldn't do it. But you're correct in the sense that it gives you a perspective that you would have never gotten. And
I mean, it makes you stay, and you actually watch this, right? And that's why you get fed more of this information, because the algorithm knows that you're interested in this. So, I mean, sadly, you're going to see it, but I mean, if you completely want to be immune to this, then just don't be on a social media platform, which a lot of people are doing now, right? They want to detox and get away because it's too much information. Never in the history of the world you were able to consume information this fast and this easily. So now it's taking a toll.
It is taking a toll. I think we need those. I think people talk about, like, those Sunday breaks because it's like the church day. Ours would be a Friday, but too bad we're working, so we have to respond to our phones.
I have to.
So, okay. So now getting into the actual conversation from that transition, do you feel... This year we'll be celebrating Eid. Last year, inshallah, we'll be celebrating Eid. Last year we did as well. And you have a son, and you want to obviously bring that. You want him to feel the excitement of Eid. And obviously you'll do what you can. And a lot of parents decorate. They have these parties, and they want the kid to feel like it's as if it's our Christmas, right? Do you ever feel guilty that you're here celebrating Eid, and you're even going through Ramadan? And yes, Ramadan's a very difficult month. However, we still have a roof on our heads. We still have food for iftar. We have food for suhoor. And do you feel ever guilty that, why me?
I mean, if you don't feel guilty, I think there's morally something wrong, right? Inside of you. And I'm not saying you, but I'm saying in general. It is definitely something that you need to look at and be cautious of, right? It's something that is very near and dear to you, right? So it's going to disturb you, and you're going to feel guilty. But I feel like, based on how we are as humans, it's only natural. And if you don't feel it that way, then again, you're pretty immune to this. So, like,
narrow-minded, think about yourself. Living in a bubble almost.
Exactly. Right? So unfortunately, yes, you're always going to feel guilty about this. But this is, again, as much as this conflict is so recent in our lives, we've always been in conflict as humans. So definitely you feel it more now because of the consumption of news and media. But we've been having problems and conflicts for the longest time. It's nothing new to us.
So do you remember seeing those pictures last suhoor, and it kind of like, I mean, last Ramadan, and it was like the Palestinians are making or doing completing their suhoor and eating whatever they can find. They put like these lights up, and there's literally like rubble all around them, and they're just, you know, they still have so much faith, and they're trying to fast, even though like they're probably fasting for the last, like, you know, at that time they were already fasting for so many months because it's not like they had food, but they're actually doing it for like for Allah and for like a greater cause, and they know that it strengthens their iman. Like, do you remember seeing those photos?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's very rough. It's extremely hard to watch.
Yeah, and I thought it's like, yeah, it really keeps you in check. And I think you're right. Like, it would be morally wrong to not feel something, right?
Yeah, but sadly, it's definitely something which, you know, takes a toll on you, and it should remind people of how fortunate they are, right, in their lives. I mean, we complain about going to the office now, like with, you know, like going back to the office post COVID.
If you have to go more than 2 days,
and it's like, you know, all hell breaks loose. And then we are incredibly fortunate that we can do remote work and just, you know, get to travel.
Fasting is easier in remote work, right?
Exactly. So
I used to be like a walking zombie sometimes downtown.
So I mean, we talk about first world problems, which is okay, you know, we're so used to drinking coffee in the morning, and
we have a headache.
You know, we have a headache now, or it's so hard for us to fast and then take a meeting, or it gives you a headache or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's nothing compared to the situation that you're describing. So I think people should definitely look. I mean, we're in no position to lecture anybody and say morally what they should or shouldn't do. But at the end of the day, I think people should be incredibly feel fortunate that they're in a situation where they can enjoy life like this.
So what are some tips that you would recommend? You know, someone's going through this, let's just say like a close friend, they're going through this, they're looking at pictures, and I mean, just reading consumption, they're just consuming the war, and like they're consuming all of this media stuff, and they're having a hard time, you know, just dealing with it, struggling with it. Like, why me? Like, why am I safe when someone else, you know, I could have been like them, I could have been there. Like, I'm not there. So do you find any tips that help you feel grounded and more like, you know, God has given me this opportunity, so I'm going to make the best of it?
Yeah, it has to start with that, right? Firstly, thinking about how fortunate you are. But again, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to how do you take this, and how do you want to move forward.
Exactly.
It's like I said, it's going to take a toll on you, and you're going to remember this, and you're always going to be thinking about it. There's no tips in the world that can help you go through through this. It can make it probably better. Somewhat better. I mean, you can be as involved as possible in the situation in terms of making your stance known, or donating, right? That could be or charity in a situation. Again, like, we don't want to get into like
do the best that you can.
Like where to donate, where to do charity. But at the end of the day, you have to look at it from a perspective of how can I help the situation in any shape or form. And it's going to be extremely hard, but the one thing people can do is potentially donate.
Right? I think that's all that we can do, really, technically, and make dua. But that's what we can do in terms of actual tangible method of helping them. Like, there's no other way that you can kind of do it. And obviously activism. Say, now relating it back to Islam, while I was preparing for this podcast, I thought, you know, we connect. Like you said, it's very hard to go through these motions, but at the same time, there's not much that you can do. There's limited things that you can do, which we've discussed. But in terms of Islam, from the Islamic perspective of things, I was going through it, and I'm like, the 5 pillars, do you think there's something about the 5 pillars that helps give us contentment and help us go through this difficult time as a ummah?
Yeah, I mean, the 5 pillars, it's we talked about one, which is zakat, right? Donation, prayers. And it's definitely something which is going to be an integral part of this. But I also feel like as a community, I feel that the leaders have failed in a big way. That's why we feel helpless, because we're not in a position, or we're not in a situation where we have leverage in any way or form. Sadly, that goes back to not having strong leadership in our communities. So how do you make things better? I mean, sure, you can pray and you can do zakat, you can do charity, but at the end of the day, you have to put yourself in a position where you can succeed, right? Put yourself in situations and positions where you have leverage and can influence things, right? Education is an important thing, which unfortunately in our communities it's fairly backwards. I mean, we were lucky enough to come. I come from Pakistan, so I'm incredibly fortunate.
From the same area.
Yeah, so I mean, we're fortunate that we migrated, came over here. But if you look at some of these communities, extremely poor, lack of education. So just besides the typical, one-on-ones on what we should do and what we can't do, I think that narrative needs to change a little bit, where people need to have stronger communities and stronger leaders who we can follow.
So talking about stronger communities and followers and leaders, I mean, not followers, but leaders, how do you, I'm going to ask a very controversial question now, and, why not? So how do you think the Muslim countries themselves, how have they actually failed us? Well,
it's a very complex topic. I mean, we'll be here 6-7 hours talking about it.
Yeah, let's talk shit about that.
But at the end of the day, that the 2 main countries that currently can do something, or even as a Muslim nations, there could be some sort of coalition. Sadly, no one gets along.
Yeah, I am so shocked that there's no coalition.
There's nothing. There's
a UAE. There should be like a MAE or something.
Either you have proxies set up by, I mean, again, no, I don't want to offend anybody, but at the end of the day, there's just proxies of either Iran, or there's proxies from Saudi Arabia. Even outside of this conflict, you see the whole Middle East is just riddled with conflicts because...
What did you think about Jordan's interview?
Well, that goes to show about no leverage. You're talking about...
He didn't respond, right?
No. Because there's no leverage.
There's nothing to respond to.
There's nothing to respond to. If you are in a position of power or you have leverage, do you think anyone would just sit there and just talk diplomatically?
Why was he blinking the way he was blinking?
I mean,
was he nervous?
It's obviously, it could be a nervous tick as well, but you could clearly see that he was in no position to make any sort of disagreement or show any sort of dissent. But that just goes back to if you cannot have any leverage or strong leaders,
you don't have a seat in the house.
The situation is not going to change, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the truth. We're going to be sitting here and talking about, again, what could be done, what could not be done, and how this happened, how this did not happen. But if these conflicts, I mean, you look at, like I was saying before, this is not the only conflict. Sadly, this is one of the most brutal ones. But you look at Yemen, what's happening there. Look at Syria, you look at Libya, Iraq is already done. So I mean,
like we also destroy our own. Right?
We did. That's, I mean, the wole conflict in Yemen is just an internal.
Isn't it from Saudi?
It's both. Right? It's the Irani-backed militia and the Saudi-backed insurgents. So
that's so unfortunate. But I guess politics, I don't know. We don't really know what's actually happening per se. We only know what we're told too at the same time.
Yeah. And again, we did not want to go into a lot of detail, like you said in the beginning. But we ended up talking we got a lot more deeper.
Actually, that was one of the questions. What can Muslim countries do to help support these atrocities that are happening around in the Muslim countries? But at the same time, it's kind of like a weird question because it's happening in Muslim countries, sometimes by Muslim countries.
Exactly.
And they're not doing anything to help Muslim countries. So it's like you're almost inflicting pain on your own kind.
Yeah, it won't change until the mindset changes and there is less distance between the two major sects, at least. At the very least. The situation will continue to be like this. And even if you get out of this, you have other conflicts too. I mean, we're at a brink of a pretty massive problem. But this is big enough. But if you look at it on how different countries are responding to the current issue, everyone is inching towards a full-fledged war in the Middle East. Not to say what's happening. I mean, it's outside of the realm of the Muslim communities. Russia, Ukraine, China, Taiwan.
It's kind of going crazy. I saw. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I saw this documentary with Facebook. I think it was on Netflix a while ago, and they basically kind of alluded, and this was like the co-founder of Facebook, and they alluded that it's because of social media that you create these divides, first of all, and then you nurture these civil wars, and then that's why you see them happening so often now. And they never used to happen so often before. But now everybody, if you see one video, for example, if I believe conservative, let's just say, if I'm believing conservative, all of a sudden everywhere on my social media is going to show me one perspective. So I think the whole world is thinking that. You feel supported enough to go out and start talking whatever you feel like you're talking about, like just about that one perspective, which you don't know is correct.
I would disagree with the notion that the civil wars is primarily because of social media or Facebook.
You don't want to give it that much power.
No, it can definitely be called a catalyst in intensifying some of this. But civil wars dates back
so
ancient times, and we've always been in civil wars. Before internet.
But don't we see it more like America's very divided now, like you just see it in the
you see it. This is the first time you see how divided they are as a country.
They're so divided.
It's a little more, I would say, extreme, but it has been common throughout the history of the world. So
why can't we all just get along? Is it that difficult?
You're talking about. I think it's very difficult if you look at how complex the history has been. It's extremely.
I think it's like, I don't know. People have like, it's countries. There's power. You want to own something. There's importance of land. There's importance of treasures and riches that you have in that land, and then for trading purposes. Obviously, it gets very complicated. But
forget countries, and in our communities, families don't get along. So I think it's a much bigger problem.
Well, we're gonna fight over when is Ramadan starting. When is the moon showing?
Exactly. Like, can you even agree on when the Eid day is going to be?
No, God, no.
So I think we cannot give that much credit or say like it's easy to get everyone on the same page.
All right. Okay. So moving away from serious media conversations, I'm going to ask a simple question, I guess. How do you think, or when do you think is the best time to start now talking about or having these conversations with your own kids, with the younger generation, and what do you teach them without being biased completely too?
Believe it or not, kids already know. Like, it may be a shocker, but kids do talk, even at a very young age. You'll be surprised. And the kind of books that the kids read at a very early age, this information is going in. So you need to have a conversation with your kids on a regular basis, because one way or the other, the narrative is going to get to them.
Yeah.
And it's going to be extremely hard for you to change. And I'm not saying one narrative is bad or the other one is good, but
you just want.
But the narrative is there. Like you read school books and you would know what the narrative is. I'll give you an example of when I was growing up in Pakistan. The narrative is extremely anti-India. Again, it doesn't matter how you feel about India, but at a very early age,
they do that.
You read books, you get brainwashed, and there's also a lot of content that is pro-army and pro-military. So again, it's not right or wrong. People have their own opinions, but at an early age, when you're reading books, you're listening to songs, or you're listening to cultural things. It's going to seep in.
So did you know, I actually took this pop culture class in university, and they said that before the 9/11 war happened, they actually already started putting it into pop culture. So there was already like heroic, like soldiers looking heroic behind like a sunset, and there was already like making, like they would say they were the Orientals or like the other, like the beast. But they would already start putting like people with beards or people who are darker, like look like this and act like this. So they already started doing that for like 10 years before it actually happened. Like this was actually taught to us in pop culture. And we all know, like, if you want to change a society, you have to get through the books, you have to get to the poetry, get to the songs, get to everything. So it is very true. Like it's happened in America, and we've seen this happen in our pop culture without noticing it. And it's definitely happened in Pakistan, because all of our parents are like that, but they even know it's wrong, but they are brainwashed. Yes.
Yeah. So it's not something which is just synonymous with U.S. or Western society.
But just
it is. If you look at our society, you're gonna find a lot of stories, and again, I don't want anyone to get offended, but there's going to be stories or incidents that parents tell their kids and their grandkids, which kids seem to think is actually true or believable.
Could they trust you?
Exactly. So we do teach them at a very early age, because we want to indoctrinate them. So not a Western concept. It's as old as the world that we live in.
So you think it's very important to have conversations with kids?
It's extremely important.
Okay.
You may always think that the kids actually don't know what's happening, but like I said, they're a lot more aware. They're very smart.
They absorb.
Now, again, I don't encourage. We're not experts, but you don't encourage anybody and tell them to talk to their 3-year-olds about certain topics and certain issues. But when at a certain point, when there's an active event happening in the world, people will talk about it. It will be on the news. Other kids, even if you don't talk to them, there are older kids in the school too. They will talk about it.
Yeah, for middle school,
Exactly. So
I was gonna say now, do you there's a lot of, like, you can teach your kids, especially with what's happening right now, through the boycott. The boycott approach, because a lot of people, I think even my nieces are very like, we can't go here, and how do they know this? Like, they're young, right? They only know this because someone has told them, like, we don't go here because we're not supporting this right now.
Exactly.
And the ironic part is that I think when the tariffs started happening, people started boycotting American goods, because like, go buy local, buy Canadian, and all of a sudden boycotting was like this big, it's a big thing now. So do you think it works?
It works to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, you may think the certain product is from a different country, but the ingredients that are being used may come from regions that you actually support. So how do you make that decision?
That's very difficult to actually.
Right. So
But then we have like sources now that kind of filter as much as possible.
Yeah,
to
you
make
can,
it easy.
but it will be a full-time job to actually look through and see where you would have to track the money.
Yeah.
So it's extremely hard. It's easier said than done, and say like, boycott this brand, and the boycott worked to a certain extent. But again, at the end of the day, this is a very small piece in
the larger
thing that we should focus on, or the people should focus on. You can boycott, but why don't we have brands originally which are that famous or have leverage?
I was gonna say, because when you look at the boycott list for a certain incident that's happening in the last year, how many do you boycott?
Exactly.
Everything is like on that list, actually. Like legit, everything is on the list, and it makes you really wonder, what do we own? Like, do we have power over anything?
We don't, and that's a sad reality. So the more these communities will get educated and be in positions of power, the more you will invest in certain things, and eventually make brands out of them. But if you're just gonna be in a position where you're just a consumer, well, tough luck. You're the only hope for you again is prayer at the end of the day, which is super important. Don't get me wrong, it's extremely important. But
but I know, like, there's not much you can do.
Even Allah says that
tie your camel, and then
my grandfather used to tell me the story growing up, which was this person is praying every day that, hey, Allah Mia, please, can I win the lottery? Right, please, today be my day. I really want. 5th day, 6th day, and the 7th day, someone says to him, at least buy the ticket. Right. So it's you can pray all you want,
and then
you can pray as much as you want, but at the end of the actual act,
well, he shouldn't be buying a lottery.
But it's just a joke, right? Which is it related to and resonated with me as a kid, which is, okay, you gotta action at a certain point.
You have to act. Yes. All right, so more of a personal question now. How do you find, or what do you think that helps you spiritually to, when all of this stuff is happening around you and it's pretty dark, although we just talked about it, but if you really dive into it, it's a pretty dark world out there sometimes. So how do you spiritually get through it when things are really rough?
This is a tough question.
More of a personal question. So
it's
what helps you?
I think spiritually, we all know there's healing in prayer. So that's one. One thing that I feel like works for a lot of people is actually staying active. And I'm not just saying like stay as an activism, like I'm saying like exercise, like physical exercise.
I was thinking protesting.
Like I was like, okay, we've seen protests, but for an individual to improve their quality of life and also their mental state to be, otherwise you're going to be shut down, right? So you need some courage, and you also need
to be strong.
You need to be actually physically strong to be part of something which is bigger. But if you're always going to be thinking, obsessing about certain things and being depressed about it and not taking any action, it's always going to be a problem. So that's prayer, obviously, but I feel, and then the other thing is, you get your news from social media. A lot of people do.
Me?
In general, but
I try to read like the McLeans. Like I feel like they always say never read like a news article. Go to a magazine, like a journal. Like read articles from there. Because they're more accurate. They're
it is, but it is at a certain point you also need to shut down and
take a break.
Right. So
take Jim off.
So spiritually that can do wonders for you.
Okay, those are good tips.
I'm in no position to.
But those are good tips. I think it's funny that you answered actually with, yes, you said like what anybody was thinking, probably like prayer and all that, but you actually said be active, and I think that's something somebody, maybe not everybody would answer that question like that. But it is very important to be physically active because they say that if someone is depressed, like your posture changes.
It does.
Right? So because your posture changes, if you are more active and more physically, like, really making your body work, it kind of like, it renews you, and it gives you energy, it gives you something to live for, maybe. And obviously the good hormones, and like you just feel more happier, at least to an extent.
Your outlook changes. your perspective changes, your outlook changes. So
maybe you even feel better by yourself.
Exactly. So that's the whole point about the exercise aspect of things. Again, I'm not a fitness expert by any means, or
but you
claim to
you work out quite a bit. So
to a certain extent, but
you understand the importance of it. So that's okay, that's good. We're going to be going to our mosques more in the month of Ramadan. We're going to be talking to maybe some influential people who like attend the mosque or giving events or conferences, because it's just a time where everybody's out almost. How can you use Ramadan as a form of action and reflection?
Tough question again.
I like to ask the tough questions.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Ramadan, I feel like there's our communities especially, they become increasingly active in Ramadan, which is good. That's the whole point.
But not you.
But it's
I know
like
where this is going.
1 month in the entire year.
Where are you the rest of the year?
Where's the rest of this energy? And even if you look at our Ramadan, I'll speak for Pakistani community or South Asian community at least. You look at our Ramadan or growing up in Pakistan, it's extremely extravagant, right? You fast, but what are you opening your fast, or how are you breaking your fast? It's always parties. It's always dawats that you're invited to, and you have 50 different things that you want to eat. So a lot of times, to me, I cannot comprehend what's the purpose of all of this. If you're only going to not eat for a selective period and then indulge in anything and everything, and then just celebration is a good thing, but the whole point is also
you're losing that essence.
So it's not even in Ramadan, like we don't really.
But if everybody's out, let's just say like that's a different topic. Yes, people are extravagantly like having iftar parties and all of that, which is a different topic on its own. But now that everybody's outside and they're actually talking, and it is sad, it's very, very unfortunate that our mosques are full in the month of Ramadan and then they're empty, like literally the day after Eid, right? Like it's literally the day after. So is there something that you do? Actually, I'm going to ask you maybe, is there something that you do that you're like, okay, let me try to do this in Ramadan and maybe I'll continue this later, or if you want to pick up a new habit, or like, I don't know, you want to remove something from your life, like, do you find it as a place, as a time where you think that this is a good time to start, laying the foundations for the next 11 months? This
is sounding more and more like New Year's resolution.
Yeah, I think it is become like that, but it's not like our New Year's, but
this is what, a certain change in your lifestyle. A lot of people do that as New Year resolution too. But in Ramadan, I mean, it's mostly about, how can you impact the less fortunate, right? And again, like, we don't want to be over here and say that we're really actively engaged.
No, we're not. And that's why we're doing the podcast.
Exactly. So
we're starting this.
But you always get that thought that you're gonna be more active. You're gonna be more involved in your community. You're gonna actually, and especially with the younger generation. And even with the kids, you want to do something which can empower the younger generation, right? You want to do something, and I'm not just talking about religious or spiritual skills, like actual tangible life skills as a community that you can give and change the outlook, right?
I think since everybody's out though, like in the month, it is something that we should endeavor to do more than just host an iftar or to have an Eid party. I think if we have access to this large pool of people, which kind of wake up in the month of Ramadan and then you see them. There are some people that you see just in Ramadan and at the mosque or like at another event, and I think we should endeavor actually to do something greater.
It should, but again, we have a lot of differences within communities, so I don't know which ummah or which community you're gonna follow.
It's hard to sit down and think,
right? So,
but I think we should, and maybe for our listeners or viewers, I always find that there should be something that you should take away from the month of Ramadan, like something new, or you should try to find a new habit or new, like, I don't. For example, I'm gonna give an example. I pray really fast and I should slow down, which I've been told multiple times. But I know myself, like I don't need to be told, but I know that I pray a little too fast. So like last Ramadan, I was like, I'm gonna like try to pray as slow as I do in Ramadan. You know, sometimes like, you know, you're in the mosque and stuff. So I'm like, I'm gonna slow down. It didn't completely happen, but that was like one goal. It was like every year I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take one thing and try to implement it in my next 11 months. It's hard, you know, but it's at least the 30 days you can create a habit.
Yeah.
And that's the whole notion of it. I think that's the whole notion of Ramadan, and that's why people do New Year's resolutions. I mean, it's like New Year's resolutions.
Yeah, I don't want to diminish the importance. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people do get habits out of it. Growing up, it was, I want to be more punctual in namaz and, you know, whatever I've been missing, gonna make up for that. Yeah. But you always don't follow through with it. But I think it's a great. It's a good intention. Definitely. I mean, hopefully, inshallah, we all. Yeah, if you can take something from it. Yeah. Definitely something that's just amazing. Okay. All right. Well, that was a good conversation. But before I let you go, so we always have a game at the very end. Oh. But before the game, there's a couple of questions that I rotate, and it's a little bit more insightful based on the conversation that we've had. So I'm just gonna grab that. This podcast, by the way, has everything. Yeah, serious questions, games. You have to have a game. It's just random, but based on the conversations that we've had, it's what is the one thing that you think that's helped you feel closer to Allah lately? You ask all the hard questions. I'm making you actually think. This is a. What do you think that's helped you become spiritually close to Allah? In the last year or over? Yeah, let's add. I think for everyone it's different. For me, it's loss of a family member. That definitely brings you. It's no surprise. Yeah. That it would do that to you. Especially for me, it was a situation where I lost my grandmother, and after that, it definitely made me feel or wanted to get closer spiritually, especially when she was that involved in religious aspect of things. But sadly, it's mostly loss of life. Like a turmoil. Yeah, it brings you to that closeness. Yeah. When the times are tough and rough, then you feel the closest, or you want to go. Isn't it when times are tough you create good men? Yeah. All right. So for the game, so this is a yes or no question game, or one word. So I may have like actually put something where you may have to say a word, but most of them could be yes or no. Okay. Oh, wow. And this is supposed to be like really fast. Okay. Should faith and politics be separate? Yes. Is social media activism enough? No. Should religious leaders or the mosque speak out or act upon on political issues? No. Because it goes back to the first question. Yeah, so it should be separate. Yeah. The state and the church. Yes. Like they call it. If you had to pick one, boycott or protest? Protest. Should wealthy Muslim countries take more refugees? Yes, it's a tough question. It's a dependent. I know. Yeah, it's a very deep question. I think yes and no would do injustice to this. One political leader you wish would speak out more on global injustices. I would have said someone from our side, but sadly there's no leaders on our side. Imran Khan is one, but I mean he spoke up a lot. Again, it's a cliche answer. That's unfortunate that there's nobody on our side. But again, I can't. That's the sad part, that I can't think of anybody. I feel like the Saudi prince needs to speak out. But he's too busy buying golf and soccer teams and all that. But it's not something which is. But I don't look at. I don't look at him as a role model. Exactly right. So a leader needs power, to have. That's why. Yeah, but a leader also needs to have charisma, right? Like he has nothing, but he has power. It does, but I mean, you had Nelson Mandela. Yeah. In South Africa, he wasn't super rich, but
I mean,
people
we don't
gravitated
know
towards
the
that.
under the radar people, but we know like
But still, I'm saying it's not always about power. It's about how you carry yourself too.
That's very true. If you could pass one law today to help oppressed communities, what would it be? This is interesting, actually.
One law. Fortunately, we live in a society where we're on even playing field. I feel like, at least in our society over here. But you can't say the same from the societies that we immigrated from.
Like equality in society.
Yeah, like equal rights. Right? So what's one law over here? I mean, if you have a law which, over here at least, which marginalizes or looks at people in a different way, then I don't think we'll be here.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does apply to some of the other countries.
Equal rights.
Equal rights and
for freedom
minorities.
of speech. Freedom of speech.
Yeah, again, like we're over here talking and doing this podcast.
Yeah. Exactly.
Imagine doing this in some other countries.
Damn, I'm gonna get banned.
But
Cancel
again, like the
culture.
10 people that are gonna watch this, they're not gonna say anything. But even if this was another country and 10 people watched it, you will definitely hear from people.
Yeah. Okay. One global issue that needs more attention.
There's so many global issues.
One global issue that needs attention.
Pollution. I mean, I don't want to sound like a climate activist, but when you look at the situation in India and China, I don't know how this world is going to sustain itself for longer periods of time. So again, I'm not, what's the activist, Greta Thunberg? Like, again, I don't adhere to her principles, but some of the things that we're seeing in these countries.
Yeah, and the forest fires.
Exactly,
right?
And the hurricanes and not to add the nuclear arsenal that everyone has now. So
and all that, like in the war, like when you shoot all that, like that's pollution. So, it's really bad for you.
Exactly.
Okay, so the last question would be just I think this is something you can add to perhaps. What's one message that you'd give to Muslim youth about activism?
I think, at least from the younger generation, I think they're more active than I would have imagined, to be
Gen
honest.
Z.
If you look at it, the kind of protests that we had. So I don't think activism is going to be an advice that I'll give and be like, be more active, because I saw the protests. So I don't think I'm in a position to say you should do X, Y, and Z. I think they do it better than our generation for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to give up my age, but what I saw on the campuses and everything, it was impressive.
No, they definitely do.
But I think the one thing that everyone should focus on, and this is what I was saying earlier, is going to be education and putting yourself in a position where you have leverage and you're not just thinking about how to improve things, but actually you're a decision maker in certain things. You have to be in different aspects of life, whether it's the law field, medical field, finance. We have to get to the higher education. This was the golden age of Islam when actually people paid attention to this, but I feel we have really strayed away and shied away from the actual world issues and the involvement of people into higher education. I think that is the most important thing for the younger generation.
Yes, education is very important. I think we're definitely seeing the lack of it in our communities.
Get to higher positions. Yeah. And then you can influence and make decisions.
Yeah.
As opposed to relying on other people.
Just don't lose your deen, because we do have like Muslim leaders who are in very high positions, but they don't do
But it's not a lot.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
But they also don't do a lot either. So.
Well, they don't do a lot or not, but it's unfortunately our heroes. If you look at any of our heroes,
just as a side note before we end the podcast, I feel like the world has really painted Muslims in a very wrong way. Other than yes, the beast, the other barbaric, like that's what we know from they did that very well early in the 2000s. But I'm not talking about that. I feel like now they've started to paint Muslims as like what's coming out of Dubai, like just really rich, snobby, material, Muslims. Like that's literally what Netflix shows now. If you see any kind of other shows, they always have a hint of that. Like if it's a Muslim character and if it's in a good way, it's they're spoiled, they're snobby, they spend like a lot of money. I don't like it. I think that's where we're going towards, which is like the other extreme now. And there's no middle ground apparently. Like we don't have good people, I guess, out there, or not enough people with voices out there, because I watched Dubai Bling and that's not.
So you're part of the problem.
I watched it, but it was like really bad this season. Yeah. But I watched Love is Blind Dubai version too, and that was really bad. No, they really like so much toxicness, and I feel like, and my friend who actually watches other seasons of Love is Blind, like I don't watch it, and she said this was the most toxic. And why? I think it's because it's Muslim men. Like I think that's the image that they painted.
But that's what people enjoy, and that's what people are making. If you want to change that narrative, you gotta have people who actually invest in these things. Like you have so many good stories and things to choose from, but sadly we don't. We can speak about our communities. Like what is
I hate Pakistani
at the top dramas. Like Pakistani dramas or Bollywood
like
movies.
Well produced, sure, but I hate it. I hate it.
Do you see any shows which talk about or glorify some of the amazing work that was done by scholars in the late 700s?
It's so bad. It's not. It's actually bad.
So I think we have only ourselves to blame. No one wants to highlight it. Even if you do make a Bollywood movie or whatever, or a drama, it will only glorify the love dynamic and the love interest.
Speaking of Bollywood, they do a really good job.
At what?
At making Muslims look a certain way.
Oh yeah, they all have surma in their eyes.
Pakistanis.
And we wear a prayer cap.
We say Assalamu alaikum.
And then we have a tasbih in our hand.
They do a good job though, but that's called propaganda.
Yeah, so that's how they indoctrinate the kids, and
exactly
how you grow up hating and Pakistan if you're an Indian.
Can you believe that it's like 2025 and it's still the same image of a Muslim from like the 80s?
But that just goes to show the ignorance too. Yeah. Right? That things have evolved. Things have changed.
But that's propaganda to the next level, and I think we need people to produce like good movies,
India has a significant Muslim population.
And they're not represented. So
why are they not represented? Because they don't control their own narrative, or they don't control their own. Why can't there be shows made about that, about glorifying certain aspects which are positive? So that's why they call it. I think they call it like his story, or right, like whoever writes the story. It's
that's
the
interpretation. Whoever writes it. Okay, well, that's another topic, but propaganda is a huge. We need to actually get into production. Hence the podcast.
You start from that, and then you make a Spielberg level movie eventually. Which
on my napkin, I'm going to draft it. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you for coming and talking about a very tough topic. I hope I didn't ask too many tough questions.
You asked a lot of tough questions.
Yeah, but you answered it well, so that's good. So I'll thank you for listening, and I'll see you all next time.